This is Jordan. This video is being recorded on the early afternoon of Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Got a lot more great content coming over the weeks ahead. Thank you. In this video, I'm going to talk about what happens to gold and silver when the stock market breaks out to a new all-time high after at least a year or so of consolidation or of a sharp correction. So let's get into some of the examples and what kind of conclusion we can draw from this recent instance. So here we have gold here, silver here, stock market here, gold divided by the S&P. Of course, that adds so much context. So here we are now, 2-year correction. Stock market's broken out to a new all-time high. So this has happened 3 other times in the last 10 years or so. Now, it did happen in 2013, and that was, I think gold was already crashing at that point. Silver had already crashed at that point. So, I mean, that's another instance I didn't count. But let's take a look at these last 3 and think about, what we can infer as to, what might happen over the coming months. So stock market here, this is the one, 2015, 2016, the first one I should say. So breakout here, this actually coincided with that 2016 peak in gold and silver, which held up for quite a while. I mean, that held up for about 3 years, even a little bit more in silver. I mean, almost 4 years in silver. Gold against the S&P then, it hadn't broken down yet, so it broken down afterwards. So that's one. I'm going to skip over this example and talk about here, or let's go chronologically, I'm sorry. So here's the S&P, 2018, 2019. I mean, this is not a perfect consolidation, false new high here, then it corrected 20%. Then you have a bit of a consolidation here before really pulling away here. That's why I gave it 2 marks. So you have here, and here is when it really broke out and it started running. But for precious metals, this was right after, this first line was right after the Fed cut rates. And so gold was in position for that 6-year breakout. And as soon as the market indicated the Fed was going to cut rates, gold started moving up to the breakout. Then the Fed cut. Gold had the huge breakout, as we all know. Then it continued until the COVID crash, and then all that money came in, and gold went up here and peaked. But we'll get back to that. So looking at the stock market, I think I already mentioned this. So this was the one instance where it didn't affect the gold and silver and precious metals. That was because it was several years. They were correcting and consolidating for several years, and then the Fed cut rates. Now, and I marked here, this is 2016. You can see this is a major peak. This is another major peak in gold and silver, right in August of 2020. So what's interesting is, let's look at the S&P. Now, this wasn't a multi-year consolidation. It was a crash. But, you had a crash, so that's a significant correction. But, it was right after, if you look here, this was when the stock market surpassed the previous high right before COVID. Right here, then it consolidated for a little while, then it really took off here. So let's look at these 2 lines. So first line, this is right when gold and silver peaked, basically. Silver, you had the silver squeeze, made it, new high by a tiny bit, but basically the sector peak was here. So stock market had broken out here, new all-time high, and it took a couple months of consolidation. Then new all-time high, really kept running. Gold against the S&P. Now, by the way, back to the rate cut. I forgot to mention that gold against the S&P was trending up, so it was in a healthy position. Here it was trending down. It was weak, and so that obviously continued. That was pretty ugly as the stock market kept moving to new all-time highs. New all-time high kept continuing. Now, here we are, the latest instance. So 2 of the past 3 were quite bearish for precious metals. Now, here we are at present. Stock market's broken out. Gold, it closed rounding up, it closed at 2051 today. So it's still really, I mean, this is like what, less than 2% from breaking out. So gold is really close. Silver has been stronger in the last week or two, but nevertheless, it's underperformed gold during this entire period. So this setup here is different because these two peaks, two of the last three peaks, look, this was after a big move in gold and silver. Now this is coming at the end, potentially at the end of a long correction, bullish consolidation for gold in the very big picture. And that's more like, what we had around here where, or at least from here, gold corrected and consolidated again for 3 years before it broke out. So that's something to keep in mind. So it's interesting because automatically, I was thinking about this last week and thinking, well, this is automatically bearish for precious metals. And it may be for a little while. But again, when we look at where gold is, technically, and silver follows gold, it lags a little bit. So look where gold is technically. It's similar to this, 3-year consolidation. So it comes down to the Fed cutting rates, basically. Obviously, if the Fed were to cut rates in the next couple months, I think that's going to cause gold to break out. If the Fed doesn't cut rates, like let's say the economy, it builds strength, it gets stronger and stronger, the Fed can push out rate cuts even farther, that's going to be bearish for gold and silver, at least until long-term interest rates trend up and hit that 5% or higher. Now, gold against the S&P right now, this is in breakdown mode. It broke down here. So this is probably going to continue, I would think, and test this. So there's more downside here. So in the very short term, maybe gold could correct and fall to 1900 potentially. So the S&P, as it potentially continues higher, this is going to continue lower. And we'll see how things shape up. Again, if the Fed is going to cut rates, in the next, what month are we in? Almost in February. The Fed's going to cut rates in like 3 or 4 months. Then we're probably going to see in the middle of the year, we'll see gold break out like it did here. And silver will follow. All right. Well, I know that's a lot of babbling for one chart. It's a lot to take in. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Talk to you guys again in the next video.